It's Monday, June 1st, and this is now on H&N.
Smashed windows and looting are becoming a bigger story than the broken systems that got us here.
Breaking news, an independent autopsy says George Floyd's death was a homicide, contradicting the medical examiner's report. We have special team coverage from across the globe coming up.
The president calls Governors Week as some protests nationwide turned violent. I'm Natalie Brand with reaction from the White House and the message of peaceful demonstrators.
If you don't dominate, you're wasting your time. They're going to run over you. You're going to look like a bunch of jerks.
As demonstrations spread across America, the world is taking notice. I'm Ian Lee with how the protest movement has gone global.
This is what happens. This is what is built up to this.
These stories, plus we enter the next phase of reopening. We'll have an island-by-island breakdown coming up on This Is Now. Good afternoon, the time is now 1:07. You're watching This Is Now on H&N. I want to get you over to a live picture from Washington, D.C. We've seen a lot of developments here happen in the last hour. The president just spoke. You're seeing a reporter report on the issue right now. But in those live pictures, we saw military police moving in on protesters. We have reports of tear gas being fired. All this happening moments during or after or while the president was speaking from the Rose Garden. We're going to have so much more on that coming up in just a moment. First, we got to get to some breaking news from here at home.
That's right. On Kauai, Davidson's beach in Kekaha is closed to swimming after a surfer was apparently bit by a shark. Resident Douglas Moore says he was out surfing this morning at around 8:30 when he felt a stinging pain on his right hand. Let's hear what he had to say.
All right, let me pull up his sound right now, Ash.
Yeah, so what happened is I felt a little like a sting on my right finger. It was on the rail of my board, and I just shook it because I thought it was a jellyfish or something. And then I noticed something big in the water, and then right then it surfaced right next to me. I could see the fin and the back, and the back was all scraped up. And then I think I hit it once or twice and then took off for shore. I noticed, because it was my right paddling hand, I noticed there was a pretty big cut on it. And I just kept paddling and caught a wave and went right in and took care of it.
Moore says it appeared to be a tiger shark. He says he caught a wave in and was taken to Kauai Veterans Memorial Hospital by a friend. He needed 26 stitches, but says he's doing great otherwise. Signs are posted up at the beach, and lifeguards are roving the shoreline, warning beachgoers to stay out of the water until further notice. And this isn't Moore's first experience with sharks at Davidson's. He was there back in 2017 when a French visitor was attacked by a shark. Moore tied a tourniquet around the man's leg when he was brought to shore.
And we have even more breaking news coming into the H&N Digital Center. I want to show you these live pictures from Minneapolis, where Ashley, I know you have some more details coming in regarding the George Floyd case.
That's right. So this just in, the family of George Floyd says an independent autopsy has found that he died of asphyxiation from sustained pressure on his back and neck. The family's autopsy results differ from the official autopsy as described in a criminal complaint that ruled out asphyxiation or strangulation. However, the Washington Post is reporting that the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's report ruled Floyd's death as a homicide. Now, the family's attorney says former police officer Derek Chauvin should be charged with first-degree murder.
And again, taking you back to those live pictures from Minneapolis, we're seeing waves of protest form across the country. The president did just speak about this. Let's listen into what he had to say from the Rose Garden at the White House.
First, we are ending the riots and lawlessness that has spread throughout our country. We will end it now. Today, I have strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets. Mayors and governors must establish an overwhelming law enforcement presence until the violence has been quelled. If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
We'll have more on what the president had to say in just a moment, but let's take it over to Elise Preston in New York with more on the protests taking form across the nation.
Terrence Floyd brought flowers and prayers to the spot in Minneapolis where his brother George was killed in a deadly encounter with police. He called for an end to the violence that has rocked the nation.
What are y'all doing? Y'all doing nothing, because that's not going to bring my brother back.
Floyd begged the crowd to bring change through political activism rather than the destruction which has scarred cities from coast to coast. Over the weekend, Los Angeles called in the National Guard to help control violent demonstrators.
They have not just caused chaos and damage. They are hijacking a moment and a movement and changing the conversation.
At moments, the protests have led to change. In Fort Lauderdale, an officer was suspended after shoving a kneeling demonstrator to the ground. Daytime protests in New York have been mostly peaceful, but after dark, some of the gatherings have turned to vandalism and looting.
In Manhattan's iconic Soho district, looters smashed windows and ransacked these high-end stores. Neighbors came out to see the damage.
It was so brazen. They weren't afraid. They weren't embarrassed. They weren't trying to hide their faces.
New York Mayor Bill de Blasio says vandalism will not be tolerated, but understands the need for police reform.
People are demanding more change, and they have every right to, because they're in pain.
In the midst of a giant crowd of protesters in Brooklyn, 2 officers took a knee to show solidarity.
If I can take a knee with the community to garner and broker peace, then I'll get on my knee every day.
1 police officer has been charged in Floyd's death, but activists in Minneapolis are calling for the arrest of 3 others who were there and didn't stop the brutality. Elise Preston, CBS News, New York.
Dozens of protesters rallied in front of the Kapolei police station yesterday, calling for justice for George Floyd. Many of them wore masks and held signs saying Black Lives Matter. The protest was peaceful and no arrests were made. A demonstration was also held in Waikiki. Police said they arrested a 29-year-old Christian Grotto for illegally carrying ammunition. Last night, a candlelight vigil was also held. Dozens of people showed up at Magic Island. Organizers hoped the event would provide a space of reflection, comfort, and healing.
We are connected to those folks, even though we might not deal with the same things that they do day to day. We, as Black people, are, many of us, the inheritors of violence and have these stories in our own family, have had run-ins with police. I certainly have.
So it was really important to us that we can show, our community here, that we all are still feeling that pain and we all are going to rise.
Now, select Target stores across the country remain closed in response to these protests. Photos sent to our newsroom show the doors at the Ala Moana location boarded up, but we're told the store is open today.
Meanwhile, President Trump blasted state governors today, calling them weak for not ramping up enforcement after days of protests and riots nationwide. Natalie Brand has more.
Outside the White House, demonstrators gathered for a 4th day in a row.
We're all just people, and we just want to be treated equally.
Inside the White House, President Trump demanded a more aggressive response from the nation's governors to address protests that have turned violent. CBS News obtained audio from that call.
You have to dominate. If you don't dominate, you're wasting your time. They're going to run over you. You're going to look like a bunch of jerks. Most of you are weak.
The president has blamed far-left groups like Antifa for the uptick in rioting, despite reports from local officials that far-right groups are also said to be involved.
Justice will be served. He will not have died in vain. But we cannot allow the righteous cries and peaceful protesters to be drowned out by an angry mob. The biggest victims of the rioting are peace-loving citizens in our poorest communities. And as their president, I will fight to keep them safe.
The Attorney General, who met with the president Monday morning, has directed the Bureau of Prisons to send special riot teams to Miami and Washington, D.C. National Guard units have also been activated in at least 23 states and D.C. As crews clean up damage to buildings and businesses here in Washington, the city's mayor is imposing a 7 p.m. curfew and calling for an end destruction and instead a focus on change.
Republican Senator Tim Scott told CBS This Morning he has spoken to the president about holding a session to discuss solutions.
It would be good for us to have a conversation with some of the leading voices in the African American community and some of the leading voices in the law enforcement community without a bunch of cameras, though.
Everybody is frightened and everybody's angry.
Former Vice President Joe Biden met with African American leaders Monday morning. If elected, the presumptive Democratic nominee promised to form a police oversight board within 100 days of taking office. Natalie Brandt, CBS News, Washington.
The NBA's commissioner is condemning racism and police brutality. Commissioner Adam Silver sent a memo last night to NBA league office employees to address the protests seen across the country. Silver promised that the NBA would help in the fight against racial injustice. He also said he was pleased by the dozens of players, coaches, and other league figures who have spoken out.
Let's head now to London. That's where Ian Lee is. He's going to show us how the world is responding to these protests. Ian, what's the latest?
George Floyd's death may have taken place in America, but it's reverberated around the world. From London and Berlin to Auckland and Copenhagen, people are hitting the streets in solidarity with American protesters.
We're protesting against the white supremacists and the police brutality that's been going on in the U.S. and also around the world, and we're standing together with George Floyd and all of the other black members that have been murdered due to police brutality.
Yesterday, hundreds marched toward the American embassy in London. Gatherings like this are against current lockdown rules as Britain continues to battle the coronavirus.
Racism kills lives every day. Every day. Before the pandemic, black people were still dying. So I will stand here to fight for the people that were dying today, that were dying yesterday, 400 years ago.
The protesters were peaceful, but they're taking notice of American cities on fire.
I do not condone what is going on in terms of the violence. There should be a peaceful way, and this is what we're doing in Berlin.
What do we want? Justice!
As demonstrators continue to rally in America, protesters overseas want to make sure their voices are also heard. Ian Lee, CBS News, London.
Meanwhile, those protests are raising fears that the mass gatherings could lead to more outbreaks of the coronavirus. Tom Hansen reports.
As thousands of protesters march through the streets of New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio is warning of a potential second wave of the coronavirus.
For those who have made their presence felt, made their voices heard, the safest thing from this point is to stay home, obviously, because we don't want people in close proximity to each other.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced the number of positive cases in the state has dropped to less than 1,000, the lowest level since the outbreak began.
We should be very proud of what we've done. Just don't snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
The nation's largest city, which was devastated by the world's deadliest outbreak of COVID-19, is set to begin reopening June 8th.
Dental offices in New York State were allowed to begin treating patients again Monday, as long as they practice social distancing. Non-essential construction and pickup orders at retailers can resume next week.
In Miami-Dade County, protests will keep beaches that were supposed to reopen Monday shut down. But the Florida Keys are welcoming non-residents and tourists for the first time in more than 2 months.
I feel safe coming down here because I'm going to do what's right to not spread, protect myself, not spread it to the others.
Shutting down the Keys to residents only helped contain the spread of the coronavirus. There were just 100 confirmed cases in the island chain and 3 deaths. Tom Hansen, CBS News, New York.
And here at home, the state health department is reporting 0 new COVID-19 cases today, which means the statewide total remains at 652. Hawaii's death toll stands at 17, and so far more than 90% of patients have been released from isolation.
Well, from salons to pools, we're going to turn it over now to Lacey Denise, who has a wrap-up of everything that's reopening today.
More businesses and facilities can reopen on Hawaii Island today, and that includes indoor facilities like gyms, bowling alleys, and theaters. Personal services like tattoo parlors can also reopen. Face masks and social distancing will be required. Workers must also clean and disinfect surfaces often. On Kauai, restaurants including dine-in services are able to reopen today. Personal services like spas and indoor facilities like gyms and fitness centers can also reopen. Organized team sports can also resume activities, and playgrounds and parks can reopen. All reopening businesses and facilities must follow health and safety guidelines. Starting today in Maui County, public recreational spaces can reopen with modifications. That includes playgrounds and dog parks, all county parks and beach parks, and some county pools. Some indoor facilities will remain closed, like bars, nightclubs, theaters, and county gyms. For a full list of what's open today, visit hawaiinewsnow.com.
With the pandemic dealing a huge blow to Hawaii's visitor industry, leaders are looking at ways to help diversify the economy. The president of the University of Hawaii says the school is looking to pivot into areas such as healthcare, construction, and education to meet workforce needs. David Lassner believes the university's 10 campuses will be critical to ensuring that people have the required skills and expertise for the development of different industries in the state.
Whether those are green conservation jobs, those are going to be based on the research that we do at the university that tells us how to care for the aina. And then there's also going to be university graduates filling those jobs, those kinds of green jobs. Same goes for high technology jobs, computer science, data science, cybersecurity, engineering.
The UH system faces financial uncertainty depending on what happens with tuition revenue, as well as state and possibly federal funding.
A lot of us were eagerly awaiting this, including myself. Oahu barbershops were given the okay to reopen last week. Our Casey Lund takes a look at how they're adapting.
Xavier Simon is with me. He's the general manager of Premier Barbershop. The downtown location, again, you guys have the Ala Moana location and the downtown location. Alex is behind us showing, again, how you guys are sanitizing each station in between each visit. Tell me a little bit more about kind of your procedures that are changing as you open back up today.
Yes, so after every haircut, we're going to take 10 to 15 minutes to sanitize our tools, clean our stations, wipe it down thoroughly, and then we're going to put our tools all in the Barbicide solution, and then keep that in there for 10 to 15 minutes as well.
I just heard Corey. To Corey, we thank him so much for coming down. He cut our hair, he cut our friend Kona's hair, just to give us some visuals. But he even mentioned, he's like, man, I feel like I'm out of shape doing this. Because, you know, you're standing on your feet all day. It is a lot of work.
Yes.
So what has your team been doing to kind of mentally stay ready to get back to work? And I know this has been a trying time the last couple of months with everybody at home not working.
Yes, so exactly. With the quarantine, we did not cut any hair for 2 to 3 months, sorry. And you know, it's just get back into groove. We've been doing this for years, so it's second nature to us.
What can you ask of your guys' customers as they return, and really just be patient as you're adapting to all these changes, correct?
Yes, we please ask you just be patient with us. We'll do everything we can with you. Just come in, hopefully with your hair washed already, and then we're gonna, and also with a mask on, and we're just gonna do our thing. You know, no handshakes anymore, but we could do the fist bump if you like.
Yes, that's right. And you know, we're all hoping that things kind of get even more close to normal very soon. But know you guys are going through a lot and have gone through a lot with your employees being out of work for so long. So thank you for being with us again. It's PremierBarbershopHawaii.com.
Yes.
All by appointment only. And a reminder that they don't have a waiting area anymore. That's closed off. You can't congregate. So they're asking folks to wait in their vehicle until their appointment. They'll text you. You need to bring a mask. They do have masks here on hand, but you do have to pay for those if you forget to bring a mask of your own. Again, PremierBarbershopHawaii.com, where you can go to make an online appointment. We'll send it back to you guys in studio for now.
All right, thanks, Casey, because we're ready for some good medicine here in the studio.
We sure are. Check out this performance by Alaska Airlines employees for Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. The Alaska Airlines crew performed Papalina Lahi Lahi. It featured former and current Hawaii residents as well as those who have ties to the Pacific region.
All right, I loved watching this like so many other this weekend. 2 NASA astronauts on a historic SpaceX mission woke up this morning on the ISS. We got Mark Strassman in the Kennedy Space Center with more on that.
Dragon SpaceX docking sequence is complete.
A 19-hour journey into space history was over. The Crew Dragon capsule docked.
Happy to be aboard.
And astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley boarded the International Space Station.
From SpaceX Demo 2 mission entering the International Space Station.
Their journey started Saturday afternoon. This Falcon 9 rocket blasted off from Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
President Trump and Vice President Pence were on hand to witness the launch.
You feel the shake over here. It's pretty amazing. A beautiful sight, a beautiful ship, too.
NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine.
This has been a long time in the making, and I think it's been really astonishing to see how it came together.
During their flight, the astronauts showed off the space capsule. They named it Endeavour, after the shuttle both of them flew in their first trip to space.
It has a touch display screen.
The capsule has been compared to flying an iPhone. Hurley said it flew just as it was supposed to.
Dragon was huffing and puffing all the way into orbit.
A third passenger was a stowaway, a toy dinosaur.
We do have an Apatosaurus aboard.
Both astronauts have young sons, no doubt proudly watching their dads make space history.
This is just one effort that we can show for the ages in this dark time that we've had over the past several months to kind of inspire, especially the young people in the United States, to reach for these lofty goals and work hard and look what you can accomplish.
Behnken and Hurley will spend at least 6 weeks aboard the space station and as long as 4 months. But if there's a headline here, it's this: America's back in the space launching business. Mark Strassman, CBS News, at the Kennedy Space Center.
So cool. I really did enjoy watching that this weekend. The coolest thing I saw was actually from our anchor, 5 p.m. anchor, Stephanie Lum. She posted her children watching it, which is sort of took it back to like the 1950s space race. They were so excited watching the screen as it just lifted off and made history, as Mark Strassman just said.
Oh, it got to me.
Yeah, it was cool.
So proud.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for This Is Now today. There's so much going on in the world and here at home. We've got some developments coming in to the state's response to the coronavirus. Governor Ige is going to talk in about a half hour. We're going to bring that to you live on our H&N digital platforms, as well as our TV stations. That's KGMB, KHNL, K5. So stay tuned for that. Coming up just about 30 minutes away. You guys, stay safe out there. Have a great day.